Attack of the Dead Men, 1915, World War I. The Auschwitz Fortress was constructed in the 19th century by the Russian Empire in what is now northeastern Poland to defend its borders against Germany. In the First World War, the fortress would be heavily contested between German attackers and Russian defenders. The Germans had made their first assault onto the fortress in September 1914, using large-caliber artillery guns, bombarding the fortress for 6 days. After intense shelling, the Germans confidently launched an attack on the fortress. However, Russian artillery and infantry counterattacks forced them back with a swift withdrawal. A second German attack was attempted in February to March 1915. The Germans were again optimistic with their new heavy 420mm caliber Big Bertha cannons. The fortress was bombed with intensity, including from the air, which it was presumed by the German command would cause the quick surrender of its Russian defenders. The Russian command also had a similar notion and ordered that the fortress be held for just 48 hours after the evacuation. Remarkably, even with massive damage to the fortress and high Russian casualties, it would be held for months, and the Russian artillery bombardment forced the German guns to again pull back. In early July 1915, the German troops were now under the command of Field Marshal von Hindenburg, who began a new offensive. This time, they decided to use poison gas to achieve their objective, as they knew the Russian defenders didn't have gas masks. 30 heavy artillery guns and 30 gas batteries were brought in range, and with the wind in their favor, the gas was launched at the fortress on August 6th. Along with the artillery bombardment, a dark green smog of chlorine and bromine moved towards the Russian positions. The grass turned black, and the tree leaves turned yellow. The Russian guns and shells made from copper were caked in a layer of green chlorine oxide. The Russian 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th companies were all but annihilated in the gas coverage. Once the gas had cleared, 14 German battalions numbering around 7,000 Landwehr troops moved in to capture the burnt trenches. But as they approached the positions, a shocking sight took them by surprise, as the remaining soldiers of the Russian 8th and 13th companies, who had come into contact with the poison gas, counterattacked with all they had left. These troops attacked the Germans with their bayonets, showing signs of chemical burns on their faces, with their bodies wrapped up in rags, spitting out blood and pieces of their lungs. The sight was so terrifying to the approaching German troops that they went into a panic, retreating back to their own positions and trampling over each other while falling onto their own barbed wire. The Russian forces then returned rifle fire and killed many of the retreating Germans with artillery. 2 weeks later, the remaining Russian survivors of the Auschwitz fortress evacuated. The newspapers would later call this the Attack of the Dead Men.